what approaches would you suggest for the specific teaching of issues and events?
Well, just to sort of clarify that in the examination, students will be expected to consider at least 2 events and to have at least 1 example to support whatever it is that they're saying about those events. And the aim really is to demonstrate that the event is represented differently according to the media text it appears in, and obviously as well according to the context. So that's mainly what we're hoping that they'll be aware of.
That's great. Could you give us some broad examples of what you would consider to be issues and events?
Well, issues, and the ones that I found quite useful and effective in terms of teaching are things like body image, poverty, and there are lots of examples of environmental issues as well that students can look at. In terms of events, obviously, you know, the beauty of media studies is that it can be so up to date, and in the year that you teach this, there will be lots of different examples of events that have occurred. I mean, if we just look at, you know, the last year that we've been teaching, we've had the student protests, we've had the announcement of the royal engagement and the build-up to the royal wedding, we've had ongoing events like the Olympics, and also there will be very appropriate local events that students can talk about as well from their own area.
And could you link that to one specific example of an event for us?
Well, if you take something like the student protests, then, you know, that was interesting, is it's quite close to the hearts of students, which always means that they respond to it, you know, better. And if you looked at, so for example, 2 newspapers that represented that event, we had The Sun, which had a very emotive representation of young people as thugs and yobs and rebels. And then we had The Guardian, that used exactly the same image with a different caption, which gave us a lot more information about why the students were protesting. They had interviews with students who very articulately explained what it is they were doing, and they weren't just, you know, throwing things through windows. And then obviously you've just dealt with newspapers there, so you would expect students to be able to take another event that has happened. So for example, if you wanted to look at the Olympics and look at different texts, so you might look at one of the little news sections that you get on 10 o'clock news, which gives us information about there not being enough funding for the British team, or things not going to be finished on time. And then obviously as we get nearer to the event, then you're going to get trailers for the event, highlights programmes, and you can look at how the same event is represented in different formats. And just bearing in mind as well that when you're looking at these texts to do with, you know, issues and events, there will always be something else that you can cover as well that's part of the specification. So for example, gender or nationality. So the text, if it's a rich text, can tick more than one box of the specification.